Hello again. Today is going to be about modules, libraries, frameworks, distributions, and languages. So to start off, we're going to answer what these are and what languages they're in, right? And the answer to that is all of them. All languages have all of these, so this is essential terminology to understanding what it is you're doing whenever you're coding, downloading software, changing operating systems. It's all necessary. Alright, so to begin, we can talk about, let's see, I'm going to cancel this download because it might be throwing off the recording. Yeah, it was. Alright, now modules are individual files. So you have like Java classes, right? You will have one type of class, one type of file, and then you'll have another one. And you can import one other file into the application, to the main file in Java. And this allows you to sort of insert or copy the code from another file into that main file with main in it. If you remember, main is used for Java. In Python, which is what this is, you can have an application.python, and you can import, for example, I'm importing xptracker_backend, and that's right here. And all it's doing is it's copying all of this code, right? And it calls it a module, and then it pastes it right here where it says from and import. So essentially, whenever you do import and whatever file it is, it's the same thing as copying all of this code and putting it in here. And this is part of modular programming, and what it does, it simplifies the entire application process. So if you could see this code, it runs a web page. So if I were to have all of this code and all of the code from OS and Random and Flask and Matplotlib, these other modules, if I had them all pasted in here, it would be very difficult for me to go through this code and edit it. So for that reason, we have modules with import and include in other languages, so that our code looks a lot cleaner. Alright, and libraries are essentially a collection of these files, of these .py files, of the class files, the main files with classes in them in Java. You don't repeat the main, you only have one main driver, right? So to better illustrate this, I want to go to something called PyDoc, and that's a library. We could talk about that another time, and it shows all of the modules that you have installed on your Python-based system, your computer, your what you're running, right? So this is Python 3.7.6. So if we go to command, okay, and let's see, I believe it's Python/version, right? No? Why don't we just run Python? So you could see that this is 3.7.6, and it takes all of the modules that are in this environment, which we could explain at another time, and it displays them in here, and it shows all the modules. So we will exit. In this, where it shows the built-in modules, these modules are part of Python inherently, so that means you do not have to import them. The code is already copied and pasted before Python. It's just not activated because you don't call any functions or objects, right? You don't initialize them. So what a library does is it takes the modules and puts them together into like one way of giving it to you, right? So these libraries look kind of like this. This is a whole library where it's all the modules bunched up into one area, and you can see right here it's /lib, which stands for library, and you could think of it kind of like a bookshelf, and if it's big enough, a library of bookshelves where every single book is a Python or Java file with code in it. So whenever you install a library in Python or Java, you're installing a collection of modules. See, all of these are collections. You have HTML, which does responses. You have PyDoc, which is what this is. You have other ones. IMAP-lib, that does emails. I'm pretty sure if we go to ease, we'll have the email one. There's OS. OS has operating system functions in it. Methods. Pathlib changes paths for each string, right? You make like a path string and you want to change it for each operating system. Python debugger, right? Pickle for, what is that one? Deploying Python files. So all of this, these are all included as a library of modules, a collection of modules. Then we have frameworks. And all frameworks is a library that is specific toward one purpose. So whenever you hear something like a web framework, it means a collection of libraries that are specific toward working with the web. So there is one that I like to use called Flask, and that's a web framework that creates websites, and it has a bunch of reused files that you could use to launch a website. Same thing with Django. I believe Spring is like the equivalent in Java. It might not be, but it's still a framework. So if we were to get examples of programming frameworks, .NET, let's see, there's Android frameworks for making Android apps. There's a whole bunch that you could get into, and I recommend going into only one. There's one called Bootstrap that's super popular for web development, and it's a CSS framework. So frameworks, libraries, modules, they're all used in all languages. So even CSS has frameworks, and CSS is like this really basic language that just changes HTML code, right? So it just edits it in a certain way. And it's actually pretty amazing that there's a framework in CSS. So it's basically a specialized collection of modules for a specific type of purpose. Alright, and that's available in all languages. Then we have another word which is kind of separate, but it's called a distribution. So a distribution is a collection of software put together for a user and deployed like officially. So an example would be Anaconda. Anaconda is a distribution of Python where it has libraries and modules that are pre-installed and given to a user or distributed to a user. And you can have different levels of these distributions. So if you have Team Edition, you're going to have additional software for teams. If you have Enterprise, it's going to include more things like R libraries that are completely different, new language modules just to function for the enterprise. And then right here, professional services, I don't know what that is. So in the same way, there are Windows distributions, right? And Windows distributions would be like Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 7, Vista. They're all distributions of the same type of product. They're just changed and distributed out. And that's why they call them distributions. So if you wanted to look at a bunch of distributions of an operating system, I recommend having fun with Linux. So Linux has a whole bunch of operating systems that get released all the time. What's today? Today is July 7th, and there's a new distribution called Endless. I don't know anything about it. I'm just telling you that it was released today at some point right here at that time, and you're able to download it and give it a shot. And there are a whole bunch of distributions constantly being edited, constantly being released, and you can get through all of them. So whenever you are trying to get into something, you can look at distribution. There are Java distributions, Of course, many different types in Python, and lots of they're just compilations of software that are edited for you. All right. I hope this has been helpful and given you a better understanding of what's going on when you're reading all of this and seeing all of this online. I hope you learned something.